Playmaker TV episode 15. We have news today, and apart from the news, we know that we are a bit late because we said we were starting 5:30, and we didn't. But that's life. Life
Yeah,
got
that's
in
life.
the way. As usually, Jesper, you are with me.
Yes.
I'm not gonna ask you how you are doing because we in Sweden we usually feel great this time of the year because of the sunlight. But how are you feeling about the things we are gonna show during this episode today?
Yeah, I'm excited. Both analyzing the Champions League quarterfinals and what to come in the future. But then also our soon to come platform release of our another product that we have. And it also shows a lot of things that we've been working on recently and what will come in when we update other products in the future. So yeah, very exciting.
We're going to remind people of the fact that Playmaker AI is a football analysis platform for scouting and statistics and football data in general. But this is a product that you guys have been working on for a long time that can help different target groups, I would say. Me as a journalist with data-driven storytelling, I would call it, with pictures, graphs, and explanations to all sorts things of football, both team-wise and player-wise, could also help scouts and players themselves when they want to negotiate new contracts with clubs, or if they want to change clubs, because these things that we are going to show you in this episode is practically, proof of what players can do and add to their teams on the pitch.
Exactly. So plenty of use, and yeah, let's just dig into it. Maybe. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so now you should be able to see my browser here. So this is the platform Scouting Playmaker AI. That is a web page that is used to be able to explore player reports and analyze player deeper. And this will both be able to be done just by purchasing a single report or getting some kind of monthly payment, so you can generate how many reports as you want to. But it will be flexible in usage. So this could be just like a single time purchase, but hopefully it will be a start of a good relationship with more than one player report purchased. So we've been talking about the avatars before. So here's a picture just showing the avatars, and we have a example spider here of Lewandowski in Barcelona. But yeah, let's scout players. So if we press scout players here, as for now in the start, there will be a lot of add-ons to this page as we move on. But here we have the quick search and the scouting. So the quick search is just if you know that you want to search for a certain player, you can just go to quick search. And Mia, which player do you want to look at?
Yeah, what player do I want to look at? This is like a candy store, but I mean, Kim Little extended her contract with Arsenal today, so let's look at her. I have a feeling this report will be good.
Yeah.
Actually.
So I just searched for Little, and you will get hits both in men and women's football. So there's a lot of players here I have not a lot of knowledge. For example, Ben Little here in Darlington, I don't know much about. But let's go to Kim Little. So let's say I want to purchase a report here. So I press add to cart. I select a season. So this is the current season in the Women's Super League. And then we have 3 different options here. So we have both. You can just purchase the spider, where you get 2 spiders. You get the positional spider, and you get the spider that is the classic one that we use on our webpage, where you have 6 different characteristics. We can take a look at that later when we look at the report. And then you have the basic and the premium, and the premium have more add-ons, and the basic is a little bit less, but more of the same. So if we press premium here, you get a notification here just on what her prime KPIs is that will be compared to other players. You also get a notification on how many minutes she has played, and this is just a reminder. So you can see it in the previous view as well, but just if you are purchasing a season, it can generate a report of a player that just played 1 game, but then it's just 1 game of data. So you know that, and you can make a change if you want to view something else instead. So I press add to cart, then we come here, and let's say I want to purchase this, just 1 report per se. You have the price here in Swedish crowns, and if you're a British viewer, you can just divide this by 10 and then a little bit less, so maybe 15 pounds. And then, so if I said 15, I mean 150. Sorry. I'm bad at it. I should be bad.
You're doing your best to
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and then I enter my email, and then if you have, for example, if you should pay us monthly, then you would have some kind of code here that would make it not go on this bill. Instead, it would go on your monthly invoice instead. It could also be that you have some kind of discount. If we set up some kind of deal, 10-15% or whatever, or a free report, for example, then you would enter that discount here, and our computer system would be notified. Otherwise, you will press order report, and then you will come to a purchase page where you can fill in your information, your card information, and so on. So I've already done this in preparation. So if we go to my email here, I have Kim Little's player report here. You will get an email about 30 seconds after you purchase the report. You will get a finished report on your mail. Simple and easy. So here you have Kim Little's player report from Arsenal this year. And then you will get a bio information about telling you that what Kim Little's player role is, the avatar here, the regista. So balancing midfielder that's very skilled with passing and progressing the ball is usually what a regista is. Then you will have the 2 spiders I was talking about. So you both have the simpler spider here with 6 characteristics that is based on our machine learning action model that tells you like how much the player adds in value when it comes to increasing the odds of scoring and decreasing the odds of conceding a goal. And you can see that she has a lot of creativity in her generating chances, and she's good with passes, finishing, defending. And then if you look at this one, you can see similar style at her. She has a lot of final third entries. Her expected threat passes is high, and she's absolute top when it comes to progressing the ball forward with carries. So that's what gain stands for. It's really how much of a distance per game do you progress the ball forward. That's gain. And compared to others, she stands out here with carries compared to passes, where she's also very good in passes. If you compare with expected threat carries, that's more of like how much a difference it makes when it comes to generating chances and increasing the odds of scoring. And that's if you do the carries higher up in the pitch, it makes a bigger difference in the expected threat measure. And also if you're like breaking lines and so on, and especially the last line and the defensive line, it decreases the value a lot. What comes next is swarm plots. I've shown them before in PlaymakerTV a lot. And this is another way of showing the spider. So the spider is just ranking the player compared to the others and telling you that this player is in the 80th percentile, or this is the she's the 5th best in this category, and then she lands on this spot. While as a swarm plot tells you not only the position compared to other players in the same position, in this case balancing midfielders, it also tells you how dominant she is. So you can see that most of the players are around here, but she and another player is like far ahead of the rest of them. So it gives you another dimension to it, really. You also
we could add for the fact is that you don't have to be a data analyst to actually purchase these reports. By the fact is that the system and your platform is creating these reports.
Exactly. So they're generated automatically in just 30 seconds. So they are you get them instantly. So actually, if you would be in a meeting or something and you would just need a report, you could just go in here and purchase it really quickly. So it's meant to give you a lot of value as an analyst, recruiter, agent, media, and also have a quick delivery. And we also still have the fact. So I'm making a lot. Like I've done consultancy work where I make reports myself, and I maybe can give them in like half a day or a day, depending on how much job. And we still offer that as well. So I can show you later how you can ask for customized orders. And so on, if you want something special. Also, maybe if you want comparisons to other players. And when we launch this product, it will be maybe less add-ons, but then we will work continuously with this and improve it, and also add more features, which will make the product even better. So don't hesitate to ask if you feel like you're missing something and want something added on. Yes, expected threat carries. She's great in that too. We could talk about her for a long time. I will not do it for now, but I will just show you that there's an heat map in the end. So you have the defensive heat map where you can see that she has a little bit more of a role to the right compared to offensively where she's acting very centered. So she's centralized in the middle of the pitch more, but in defense she has a role where she's acting in the pressing game more to the right, which is kind of interesting. You also have the defensive actions heat map, and you can see where her successful actions are, where unsuccessful action are, also what kind of action it is. And you can see, if you analyze this closely, that she has more of interceptions on the defensive half and more of tackles on the offensive half in the pressing game.
So she wins the ball on Arsenal's own half, and then she carries it up for them to start creating chances to score.
Definitely, and she's very successful in intercepting the opponent's pass and stealing it. And when she does that, she also has she usually creates a corridor for herself where she can run and then hand over to a teammate and start a counterattack. So now I'm adding a bit that maybe is harder to see instantly in the graph, but something that you just from watching her. And then you have the shot map here, and this might be more interesting if you were analyzing a striker, for example, but you can still see that it's kind of nice. You have the colors here are indicating the outcome of the shot. So if it's a shot on target, a wide shot, and so on. You also have the printed date here. It's just for an awareness of like when is this spider generated. So you know how many games, if this is for an entire season and so on. And then in the end, you have a description of all the KPIs. So if you're unsure of what int stands for in the spider, you can read about it here. What does expected threat received mean? I didn't remember that. You can read about all the KPIs used in this report here in the back. Okay, cool. So let's get back to...
let's scout the player now.
Let's scout a player.
Yeah.
So we go back to the starting point, we go to scout players. So then we can use scouting. And this is, I think the quick search will be fairly the same in the near future. Maybe we will add something, but that's more of a quick search. So it's going to stay pretty simple. But if we go to scouting, here's where we maybe could add a lot of add-ons. So for example, if you have you start to choose, or do you want to look for women, or do you want to look into men's football? So we want to look into women's. Then you can add a league. We have plenty more of leagues than this. It would be almost twice when we after them all. But now when we're still testing the product, we have these 5 that are integrated. So let's say we want to look at Damallsvenskan, the Swedish league. And we want to look at last season. We have the current season as well, but there's only 3 games so far, so not maybe that interesting to watch. Okay, then you have a view of positions. So what position do we want to look at? Maybe we don't exactly know what we want to look for. So let's say that we want to look at an offensive winger, for example. Then you have this window appears of what kind of roles that we have. And we have talked about the Playmaker avatars, and this is really these roles are classified from machine learning, like based on the KPIs and the data we gather, and really like instead of using just one position, and a winger can be used in many different ways. It doesn't say anything about how the player is used. Is this a defensively skilled winger? Is this a winger that is good in creating chances? Is this a shooting threat? Maybe like what kind of formation she's used in. So here you get more of a depth. So we have the star that is a common winger that is very good in the end product. So both in generating chances and having the last, the final pass, so to say, like a shot assist, but also is good with scoring goals and so on. Deep threat, that is a player that is good in running the deep routes, dribbles, expected threat carries, but maybe doesn't stand for as many goals as the star does. The classic winger, more of what it says, a classic winger that is good with crosses, keeping with, good in duels. And then we have the creator, that is a chance creating threat, really what it sounds like. Someone that is good in generating a lot of expected threat and not maybe necessarily having a lot of shot assist and so on, but it's very good in finding the line breaking passes and dribbles that makes a difference. And
I shared your article in the thread under this episode at Playmaker AI's Twitter account.
Great.
Right now.
Because if you want to learn more about the avatars, you have a link here, for example, where you can be directed to the article that I've written on our webpage. And yeah, if you want to look more into players, you can look at other player roles. You will see like which players are commonly for the forward. The star could be a forward as well. You see, otherwise it's commonly the poacher, the artist, the worker, the target. We have attacking midfield. You can look at the false nine, the worker. And if you want to hear more about the avatars, I recommend you reading the article that Mia has linked. But really, you can just choose which position, and then you can do another search. So for example, if we go to offensive winger and we want to find a star, then I press the star. Then we have the minute filter here that we can drag, and this is based on the maximum limit. So if I would put it here, I wouldn't get many matches because most players wouldn't have played that much. But if I press it here at 440, for example, and then I press search. So now we got a first result here. So here's are some players that are characterized as the star or close to the star. And for example, we have Evelyn Viens that was awarded the best attacker by Playmaker based on our AI grade for her season last year. We also have Ritin Connery that could have gotten that award, but left before the summer, so she didn't play as much. We have Sankovic as well But let's say we want to order a report for Rytinkan Madrid. We do the same. You saw that it says Chelsea here, and that's because the platform also always looks for the current club. So even if you're doing the search in another league, it will always show the current club. But if you select seasons here, you see that she played in Häcken before Chelsea, so we get a hit for Häcken. We can choose Häcken, and then we can choose our option. So let's say we go for the Spider, which is the cheapest product, and we get the minute reminder again. We go add to cart, and then you would go back to the cart and you would order the report just as the last time. And then you will get it on email, and this is how the Spider looks like. So the Spider is a simple report. It's only £25, 30 euros, around that. And here you still get the avatar, but otherwise you just get the Spider here in this. So you have both the easier Spider, where you can see that creativity that comes from her high expected threat carries is the biggest hit. And then you get the positional Spider that is huge for this half season, where she was the top performer in expected threat carries, dribbles, and touched in the box.
They got themselves a good player from the Damallsvenskan Chelsea. We can see that.
They did. Yeah. And you get the description here as well. So that's we could talk about this platform for a long time, but I think we will maybe focus on the
because we actually, you and me, we talked about what we were thinking of talking about this episode, and then we were like, okay, it's the Champions League week. It's a big week in the women's game for the clubs that are still in the tournament, because it's the start of the semifinals this weekend. So what we are going to show here now is the data from the quarterfinals, because maybe when people look at the semifinals, they will be able to see things that you are going to show now from the data from the quarterfinals, even though it's new games, new opponents, and all that. But it's interesting to look at this, because the interesting thing is that you have already seen interesting things that we are going to talk about, obviously, but from playing at home and away, and how the teams seem to have set up tactically when playing the quarterfinals. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. So
because also I want to add that what you are going to show here now is match reports. And match reports you work with at Playmaker AI as well, because you often show that from the men's game now, especially from the Swedish leagues, I would say. So if you want to see more match reports, then make sure to follow Playmaker AI on Twitter, because that's where you share these match reports every week.
Exactly. And if you're a club and you're interested in getting a game report the day after your game on data on just similar to what we view now, also keep that in mind. That's a possibility, and reach out to me or Playmaker in general. So let's start. We'll talk about Lyon, one of my favorite cities in the world, and Chelsea here in the beginning. And I don't know if we're going to call it a setup, but I expected Lyon to go through here, but Chelsea won.
They did.
And what we see here is, like, we have the first leg to the left, and we have the second leg to the right. And the home team is in blue, the away team is in red. So you can see here in the first graph, which is a XT flow chart, we looked at these in the last episode when we talked about Damallsvenskan's initial round, for example. And the higher the peak, the more of a threat. And if it's blue, it means that Lyon is controlling the game. They are in possession and generating chances, and Chelsea in red, that means the opposite, that Chelsea is in the lead. And you can see that the first game had a lot of intense moments and more Lyon when it came to expected threat. And also, if you look at expected goals, it ended up having almost a similar number, but for the beginning of the game, Lyon was the team generating chances.
Can we just stop a little bit, because this is actually also interesting when speaking about football data. If you don't know what team that actually went through to the semifinal, and then just look at this match report without knowing the result, it's easy to kind of guess that Lyon was the team that actually could have won.
Yeah.
But if you have also watched Lyon back this season, then it's not easy to. It's quite easy also to guess that, to know that when you know the result, that they did create a lot, but they've had problems to actually put the ball into the back of the net.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you look at the chances generated, so Lyon, they scored 2 goals in the second game, but they generated chances to almost score 3 goals. And if you look at the total numbers, Lyon should maybe have scored 3 or 4, but they scored 2, and Chelsea should have scored, maybe 2 or so on, and they scored 2. So they performed efficiency-wise, they performed better. Then also, if you look at, for example, the graphs here, like the games, a Swedish head coach for the men's team, Erik Hamrén, that was before, he said the very wise quote that goals affect football matches, and and that's also something that you can have in mind, like, or that everyone knows that, but still, if you're watching a game for a plot like this, it's of course affects a lot in the fact that if a team takes the lead, maybe their threat goes down, but that's just because they want to control the game and they are not maybe in the hunt of scoring the same way. So when Lyon had more of the influence here in overtime, it looks like Lyon maybe pushed for winning before penalties, or they were only the better team compared to Chelsea that didn't have the influence in the overtime here.
Chelsea did have better penalty takers, though.
Yeah, they did.
I must say, in the end. So, but it's interesting watching these match reports, both if you not know the result, but also when you do know.
Yeah. And if you remember the threat, you could see that it was more Lyon in the first game. And if you watch this game, you know just from remembering from watching the games. But here it's also interesting from the first leg that Lyon were playing more wide. They were having more ball, while Chelsea were playing more centered in this game and more direct. If we compare this, we also have the expected threat, the top creators down here, and you can see that Carpenter from her right wing, she was the top generator of threat, and also Lindsay Horan that has had very good numbers. We've talked about Horan's before in previous Playmaker episode. Statistically, often a player that stands out. And 4 Lyon players having as high or higher values as players in Chelsea. One thing that is interesting also is that Sam Kerr is not usually the top player in expected threat, but in this game she was in Chelsea, which is quite interesting as well from the top position here. Charles and Lauren James being used behind her. And if we look at the return leg, we can see Chelsea playing more wide, and also I think it's kind of interesting from Erin Cuthbert that didn't have as much ball in the first leg and a lower position in the second game, coming up having a higher position on average, and also generating a lot of chances, increasing her value and being a top player here in this game. for sure. Is there any of these values that surprises you, or maybe confirms what you thought about watching these games, Mia?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, I do think that Lindsay Oran is a very important player for Lyon, because they don't have the goal scorer, and she is both the scorer sometimes and the creator.
Yeah.
I do think that, and the thing you said about Charles and James in Chelsea, I do think that that's no surprise either, that they are a big part of Chelsea's offensive play.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you play 2 games against the same team, the numbers will change.
Yeah.
And probably how you set your team up as well, because you can see that, like you said to me before we started to record this, that it's very interesting to see that Erin Cuthbert is the top XT in play in the second leg, because she wasn't in the first leg. So obviously that's very interesting. And also, I do think that it's interesting that the goalkeeper is Ann-Katrin Berger, is one of the 5 players that have the best numbers for XT.
Yeah, and that's not the most common outcome. So, but
Exactly.
it's she's been involved. She's had a lot of passes and also been probably very successful in her longer passes as well.
Yeah.
In reaching her targets.
But Chelsea will go up against the winner of the next quarterfinal winner, and that's FC Barcelona, who played Roma.
Yeah, and I mean Roma is maybe been one of my favorite teams in the women's game for this season. Like, just not only Champions League, but also like scouting them in their league and how they play and so on. But in these 2 legs, you can't look at the numbers and say that it was not a fair outcome of results. Actually, that they kept the score down to just 1 conceded goal at home in the first leg is kind of impressive, because the graphs when it comes to expected goals are very similar. And keep in mind that when I create this, maybe I should have done in the opposite way, so the colors would be the same in both games. But the away team is always red, the home team is blue, and you can see Barcelona's graph here going up towards 4 expected goals in both games. They scored 1 goal in the first and then 5 in the second. And if you look at the expected threat, it's all about Barcelona as well.
Yeah, and this is also interesting because obviously I was at the Stadio Olimpico to watch the first leg, and with this actually confirms what everyone saw in the first leg, that Roma, they had plenty of chances to score, but they wasted a lot of them. And I do think that it's important to know that Roma, it was their first Champions League run like this ever. And you said it yourself that goals affects games, but goals also decide games.
Yeah, for sure.
Which Barcelona is they know that. I'm sure that Roma knows that too, but being in the position they were playing Barcelona, who was heavily favorites, I would say, favorites in this tie. So this is also two very different ties.
Yeah, and if you look at the passing networks, it looks almost like Barcelona's 2 passing networks are identical, but they are not, and they are very dark on all players. It is compared to the other games in Champions League, they generated so much threat, all of the players. And for you who have been watching, and
that's
also,
scary, actually.
Yeah, it is.
That's very scary.
And for you guys that has been watching PlaymakerTV, and also Mia knows that I like Mapi Lyon a lot, and you can see her expected threat number in both games being very high from a center back position, and it's also why expected threat is such a nice measure, because it doesn't only show you how good offensive players are in giving value to possession, it also shows you how important center backs and full backs can be for a team's offense. And for Barcelona, that's definitely a case with Mapillon. And I showed me a print screen of this when I made this, but it's also with Caroline Graham Hansen, her number here in expected threat, that's 1.4. It's one of the highest numbers I've seen from a single game at this high level. I mean, this is a quarterfinal in the Champions League, and it's a very high number. And she had one of Europe's highest numbers on average last season with 0.9 in Barcelona. And that's extremely high to average that.
Well, she is a good player.
Yeah, she's a great player, and great player for sure. Yeah, we go on. We have some more games to watch. So in the other semi-final leg, we have Bayern Munich against Arsenal, and this is the second game where I thought an English team would
Go
out of the tournament, be knocked out, and that was not the case. And the second leg here was a great game, and one of the most beautiful goals I've seen, maybe the most beautiful goal I've seen this year, with Monum's strike in the second game. Just the play up before the shot, and then the shot, it was amazing. And this is more, if you analyze this game closely, maybe not the second leg, but the first leg was pretty even. Also, if you look at the expected threat, it was kind of even, although Arsenal was actually the team performing better away as well, although they lost the game. And then in the second game, it was all Arsenal, really. They pushed for it, they scored 2 early goals, and one thing that is interesting, if you watch at the expected threat, you can see that before their second goal, they were pushing for it, and they were generating a lot of threat. But then when they took the 2-0 lead, their threat went down, and Bayern Munich didn't really generate that much threat, but it was more of an even game with less chances. But if you look at the expected threat, but Arsenal was still generating chances. So that's one thing where threat doesn't necessarily generate the chances if they, in all cases, since there are 2 different metrics.
It's very confusing to see that Arsenal is blue here.
Yeah,
although Bayern Munich is also a red team.
But they have more of blue in them than Arsenal.
That's true.
If you look at the passing networks, you can see similarities between them, like how they play. Like Arsenal played this is a very high average position away to have this, and also that they are playing. If you compare to maybe Barcelona and also Chelsea in the second leg, Arsenal is not playing as wide, and we've seen this before. They're playing more straight up, very, very progressive. You can see also Ford having more of an offensive position on average than Pelova, or in the first game, Wienreuter. And also Blackstenius in the second game actually acting a lot in linking and dropping and then in order for Monum to progress.
Yeah.
From Barcelona's case, I just want to mention Stanway having 2 very good games when it comes to generating chances, being the spider.
You mean Bayern Munich now, and not Barcelona? Yeah.
Oh, did I say Barcelona? Yeah, of course I meant Bayern Munich. And the last game, PSG Wolfsburg.
This was a very interesting tie in so many ways, because it was quite boring.
And from the expected threat plot, so you could kind of see that the game was boring because there was not that many peaks.
You can't have it all.
No, you can't. You can't have it all. And when it came to expected goals, you can see that it's still kind of a fair result that Wolfsburg was creating more chances in both of the legs, and they also came out as the winner. Pass networks. We talked about creators, Hoot, generating a high expected threat in both games. You can see although that in the first game, when it came to chances, maybe not fully not, but at least involved in play, PSG cancelled the Payor in some sense. Also, I think it's interesting also to see like how divided the passing game is, and here you have Hegring being like similar profile to what Magdalena Eriksson has in Chelsea sometimes, like really being the motor, like everything comes from her.
It's also very interesting because PSG, like Lyon, have had their fair share of not scoring goals on created chances as well.
Yeah.
They miss Ada Hegerberg in Lyon, and they miss Katoto in PSG. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. This is the same page that I've actually made 2 times.
But now we come to another thing that you have been working on
Yes.
the last few weeks.
Yes. So I thought I would share a new metric in some sense, maybe not to all of you, but a different kind of way in using expected goals and expected threat to analyze both players, but also opponents. And we're talking about possession chain. So what is a possession chain at first? So when we talk about possession, maybe you most think about how many percentage of the game that you owe the ball when it comes from, you could count passes, but you could also look at the total time that you owe the ball and so on. But possession chain, then you're talking about one sequence in possession. So when you're owning a ball from the start to the loss of the ball. And you could win the ball from winning it in possession in play by a duel, but you could also, the possession chain could also start from a goal kick or a throw-in or a free kick, for example. And the chain could end in losing the ball in possession, but it could also end with a shot or losing the ball out to an opponent's goal kick or throw-in and so on. So here we have a possession chain which is completely hypothetical, like I just made it up. So you have a defender that starts with the ball, does a pass, generates a low expected threat to number 5, maybe a balancing midfielder, let's say Little, that passes a bit longer progressive pass with a higher expected threat value to a number 10, perhaps offensive midfielder. The offensive midfielder carries the ball, generates an expected threat that is even higher, just outside the penalty area, and then passes the ball sideways, almost a bit further, maybe between defenders, to a number 9, as Stina Blackstenius, that shoots and perhaps scores. So then we have generated an expected threat along the chain, which really is expected threat really looks at like how much the metric is really how much do you increase the chance of the team scoring later in the possession chain. And in this case, the expected threat value is 0.125. So to 12.5% of the time, this possession chain would lead to a goal. The expected goal here is the value in this case, which I made up with 0.15, so kind of similar. So the chain value for expected goals would be 0.15. And that's just from the position. If there wouldn't be any shot here, there would be 0 in expected goals throughout the entire chain. The expected threat value, though, is not based on it actually being a finish in the possession chain. It's just based on the positions. So you will get that value for any turnout. But then if you have this value on the chain, then you would award all the players in this chain, you would award them this expected threat chain value and this expected goal chain value. So for this possession chain, all players will be awarded the same value. So even though maybe number 10 here is creating most of the value, she's awarded the same amount as number 9 and also as number 3. So if you want to look at one specific player and what expected threat value, it's maybe better to look at just expected threat, but this can also tell you which players that are involved in chains, but not maybe doing the specific actions that increases the value the most, but you need to have players that wins the duels or makes the shorter pass for another player to be creative.
But it's interesting because with these chains and what you are gonna show us now is the fact that teams obviously use different players for different things, but also relationships. I mean, the Swedish head coach spoke a lot about building relationships on the pitch during the international break, Peter Gerhardsson. And obviously, when you're in a club, you can work on the relationships as weapons. When you play with your club team every week.
Yes. And this is like, you could go in deeper into it and like look at which players that are involved in similar chains a lot, and also like which players that, like Kara Walsh most frequent connection, or who she most frequently receives from. So there's a lot of information that you can get from tagging chains or so on, like labeling chains when you collect data. So this is numbers from the Champions League quarterfinals. So in this case, it's just 2 games, and the 2 games will be very impactful. So if you would summarize over an entire league with maybe 30 games, it would maybe be more of a divide in between players that has the highest values, or maybe not, since Barcelona is so good. But for most leagues, it is.
You just say it so randomly, like since Barcelona is so good that
So what is expected threat chain? So expected threat chain 90, that's the summarized value for the expected threat total in all chains, just as I showed. So what was 0.125 from the chain on the previous page, that would be added to all the other chains that the player was involved in, and then divided by for every single game. So you can see Graham Hansen, she had 1.4 in expected threat in one game, and it's common then that the expected threat chain value is higher because it's the value that her teammates generates as well. But you can still see that she has the highest value. You also have here average chain duration, and that's really how long in seconds is the average chain. And one thing that is interesting here is that Barcelona's value for chain duration is way higher than, I would say that the average chain is maybe around more of 20 or above 20, but Barcelona has very high values, and that's because they have very long possession chains and their tactics from just owing the balls. If you compare to Pelova here, her number is 18. So
more direct and quick play.
Yeah, exactly. Here I have summarized expected goals, and expected goals value, you can see that it's a bit different, and then Oswala goes up here, and that's more because of like she's and Stina Bakstenius is high, and that's because they're involved in chains that has a finish. And you could look at like really before expected threat came, people used chains and summarize expected goals to kind of see like which players are involved in attacks but doesn't really do the finishing, but trying to use the expected goals value to find creators. And it's a good way, but expected threat is better since it's not dependent on actually that the shot needs to be taken. It's just dependent on the position of the pitch and like how likely it is from that position and the circumstances around that there will be a goal later in the possession chain. So actually you have the expected goal chain value, and then kind of seeing that it's now working for Arsenal, he developed the expected threat measure used to go away from expected goal chain. So why would you use expected threat in chain? Why would you involve the chain again? And that's a good question. But so one of the reasons is that it's expected, like all players can't be or all players could be creative, but all players necessarily aren't the players that makes the difference in generating expected threat. Some players are more of an anchor role where you make the shorter pass, you win the ball, and you hand it over to someone else that is creative. But then this is a way to detect that which players are involved in creative chains, but they're maybe doing the dirty work or they're doing the shorter build-up.
But what you are going to show now is a very interesting thing ahead of the weekend, I think. I actually kind of realized it now when you spoke about it, that because you can see not only chains, but the average duration, because we are going to look at Barcelona and Chelsea here.
Yeah, so here you have all the players that have played 45 minutes or more in the quarterfinals for Barcelona. So you have the number of chains. You can see that Mapeleon is involved in most chains here, I think, and it's kind of typical that a centre back or a balancing midfielder is involved in most. So that's not something rare. We also saw that she has a very high expected threat value. But she's really the motor in Barcelona. They have a lot of creative players, but Mapeleon is maybe the motor.
Yeah.
Then you have chain starts. So what is chain starts? You could, in this case, chain starts, I've shortened it to make it the table look nicer. But chain starts here is in-play chain starts. So which players wins the ball in play and starts a successful chain for your team. And a successful chain is to keep possession in 5 seconds or more after winning the ball. And then you can see that Lucy Bronze and Mapeleon, they are the chain starters. They are the players that take control of the ball when they lose it in possession and starts it again. You can also see that Kara Walsh on the central midfield and Paredes also have some numbers. But compared to maybe the strikers here with Lamina, it's Oswala having, she's not really a chain starter.
Would be weird.
Yeah, it would be weird.
But this is interesting because you could really see that. So let's have Mapeleon and Kara Walsh in mind when we look at the same numbers for Chelsea now. Because we have a center back and we have a defensive midfielder.
Yeah, so here we have Magdalena Eriksson, for example, also having, they are not starting as many chains here as Barcelona did, so they have low numbers, but she has one of the highest still.
But here you have a player in Jess Carter who is a standout compared to the rest. We must also say that, no, never mind, because that's more interesting ahead of the weekend's game. But Jess Carter here.
Yeah, so Jess Carter is involved in most chains. She's also starting some of them, and you have the first action percentage that is also involving if the chain starts from a free kick, a throw-in, and so on. And she's having a very high number here of actually being the first action, and that's maybe because her value goes up, and that's from her, starting the ball with free kicks, for example, and other set pieces, probably. Another value that I think is very interesting to use, and this is a good way of using if you compare players at similar positions, you can use expected threat per chain, and that's a good way of comparing players not dependent on how much possession they have. So just like when they have the ball, when they're involved in a chain, how much threat do they generate? So you can compare a player that is playing in a team that is less dominant to a team that is playing in a very dominant team, for example.
Yeah.
And you can see that Guro Reiten here has a very high average expected threat per chain. And then you also have the shot percentage. So this really just tells you how many percentage of the chains that Reiten is involved in ends up in a shot. And 12% of the chains she's involved in ended up in a shot.
If we don't look at position, because we know Mapeleon is a center back for Barcelona, but we also do know that Barcelona, her position is on average higher up the pitch than Magdalena Eriksson's, for example. But Magda has a high number of chain starts in Chelsea.
Yeah.
As the center back, but it's easy to see when you watch these two teams play that they play not in any way similar when they move the ball up the pitch.
Yeah. Exactly. if we go to the other game shortly, I think it's interesting to see how Pelova has adapted quickly into her. But you can also see that the number of chains here go down, like compared to Barcelona, they go down a lot. And if you look at like who's having the highest value per average, it's easy to see that you should like stopping Pelova and Ford is very important for taking down Arsenal in the end game.
Yes.
And you can also see how important Velti is from actually starting the possessions.
Yeah, going to be very interesting to see if she plays, because she announced that she was going to take a break from football.
Yeah.
But also Arsenal has announced that Kim Little won't be playing for the remainder of the season because of a hamstring injury. So let's see what happens there.
And if we look at the last number I maybe haven't talked about in these tables, is like the last action percentage. And that really tells you, if you have analyzed this team a lot, it could either tell you that, yeah, of course, Eva Pajor has a very high last action percentage because she's the player that's actually taking the finishes. But it could also tell you, like, wait, maybe this is not a good example in this case, but for example, you can see a player that has, okay, she has a very high number of last action percentage, but she's not in the tactics that we have. She's not really the player that is meant to do the finishes. I'm not saying that this is the case for Pop now. I'm just making like an example. And then you can think of, like, is this because she's taking too much of a high risk and not reaching the play that should end it? Or is this because she's not very successful in the dribbles, or like maybe is looking for a offensive challenge instead of passing? Yeah.
Well, it's going to be an interesting weekend. We haven't decided yet, but from looking at these possession chain starts, maybe we'll do a small preview on Playmaker AI's website. We haven't decided yet, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
And that's the end of episode 15.
Yes.
Thank you, Jesper. A pleasure as always.
And if you have any questions or any comments, comment on Twitter and just reach out, and or suggestions on future topics. And otherwise, just thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. Thank you.
Bye-bye.